Welcome back to the Oracle Scroll. For episode 79, we are exploring divinity. Hi, I'm Kevin Walder, your host for the Oracle Scroll. And today we're continuing our journey through this little deck that I've been playing with. And this card for today is number 47, Divinity. Divinity. As spiritual people, we talk a lot about spirituality versus religiosity. Spirituality being a personal experience rather than a borrowed experience, if we were to consider religion. So divinity plays an important role in our lives, but do we really understand what it means? What is our personal divinity? And why do we need to be celebrating it on a daily basis? Well, as someone who was brought up in a very structured religious system that demanded constantly and delivered very rarely, this is an easy question for me because divinity, my personal divinity, is something I've had to struggle to find. Sometimes we have to really dig and dig deeply to discover our own divinity. But when we start to realize that much of what we attribute to a higher power is actually something that originates within us, we might call it a higher self, but it is something that is part of us. And we sometimes overlook it until those moments when we are called upon to be something we've never thought we really were. It isn't easy sometimes to think of ourselves as being divine, because that sounds arrogant and it sounds extremely pretentious and something we try to avoid. But it is anything but arrogance and pretension to claim our own divinity. So when we think about divinity, think of it as exploring our inner selves, exploring our we used to call it subconscious or superconscious, but exploring that part of our being that is just below the radar, that we really don't notice on a daily basis unless we've tuned in. And then we begin to notice sometimes a little more regularly than we had hoped. We begin to notice that we are making decisions based in an area that we may not feel qualified for, but that's how our divinity works. Divinity calls on us to put ourselves into positions that we may feel totally unprepared for, and to challenge ourselves in ways that we may not be able to see how we're going to handle a certain situation. But once we begin to dig into what is stored in our own heart and in our own mind and in our own gut, all the capacities within ourselves, when we begin to study all of the things that we are capable of doing, capable of thinking, capable of feeling, then we realize that this is our own divinity. I once read, back when I was still involved in a very structured fundamentalist religion, that religion tended to follow the disposition of its adherents. Cultures which were predominantly violent tended to have violent deities that required violence to satisfy them, such as human sacrifice and other things that we would find abhorrent in our daily existence now. But the point of that is that it's our religion is simply a reflection of our culture. Religion is a simple reflection of how we've been raised to believe we as humans interact with each other and with nature. And it is quite often adversarial. It is very rarely a compassionate, complementary kind of existence. Those are the kinds of spiritual experiences that our own divinity will bring up and display for us. So, when we look back at some of the things that we were taught and some of the things that we were told, and this comes back to full circle about unlearning, we have to unlearn so much about what we've been told we must believe, or we've been told we must accept, because our divinity demands more of us. And that is the story of this little card, is how do we get in touch with our own divinity? Meditation works very well, and meditation can take many forms. Again, this is a structured kind of thing that has been handed to us by some philosophies, cultures, and religions, but we each have to design it for ourselves. And that's the beauty of it, is we get to decide how we're going to interact with that higher self, that higher conscience, that higher being that allows us and guides us and leads us in the ways of just working through some of the problems we have. So, card number 47, if we were to add that up numerologically, it's an 11 or a 2. Either way, there's some work to be done. And boy, we have avoided it for centuries and generations and millennia. We have avoided doing the work because it's already been done. We don't have to think. But our divinity demands more of us. So let's find ways to display and understand our divinity the way that it was intended from the beginning. And this is a belief that I carry with me all the time, is how are we showing our divinity? And how are we showing that to all of our fellows? Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Oracle Scroll. Please stop by my website at kevinwalder.com, where you can purchase any of the services that I offer. Also, check out my books, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards, and more recently, 22 Teachers, Healing Lessons from the Major Arcana. Both are available at amazon.com, and both are very easily understood and easily followed directions for using the tarot. And most importantly, please subscribe to this channel by clicking the little red button down below, and go ahead and click that bell next to it so that you never miss an episode.